It's Wednesday, best ball breakfast, which means I am joined by two of the best in the best ball business to draft a couple of Best Ball Mania 4 teams on Underdog Fantasy as I continue my quest to stream all 150 of my Best Ball Mania drafts. On tap first, of course, the Best Ball Mania 3 champ himself, Pat Kerrane, back from traveling, taking off a luxurious long 4th of July week. And then, of course, Shawn Siegele drafting with me in the second draft. These Wednesdays have been wild. Let's get to it.
Oh, another Influencer 101 for the backward hats, bro. Rigged!
Zach Ertz with no Tyler Algier bringback? Yikes.
You reached around for correlation?
That's a no-no.
You ADP bros disgust me. How about you just live a little?
Handcuffing might actually be a way to get unique if the field's avoiding it.
The Wi-Fi at this resort is a disaster?
These fucking streamers don't have player takes. What if a piss boy draft is the room you need?
Oh!
All right, Pat, how many teams did you draft on your vacation? You're still, I assume, in slow draft hell. Did you fire off some fast drafts as well? No, you're out of slow draft?
I'm not in slow draft hell. And I will say, like, I did get pretty ugly there for a few days. As you're just like drafting 16th round picks in every, 100 times. But the star method really came through for me. I mean, you star everybody, and I got through it. I got through it. It's over now. I'm doing a couple slow drafts, but no puppies. But I drafted a decent amount of teams. There was a day where I just checked out a brewery and drafted a couple $44 teams on DraftKings, a Best Ball Mania team. We got stuck in the airport because our plane got delayed. So I drafted 555 in the San Diego airport, in addition to a couple $44 teams and a couple Best Ball Manias to kill I don't know. We were supposed to leave at 9:10 and left at 4:30. So it was quite a delay. So Best Ball came through for me there. But yeah, I had stress dreams last night that I was drafting and then I was forgetting I was on the clock. And I think it was because I finally watched Barbarian, which you had recommended a while ago.
You enjoy that?
I really liked it. Really good horror movie. Then I had nightmares, but of course, since I'm so sick, my nightmares were just me missing my picks in Best Ball.
You also had this moment over the 4th of July weekend that I did immortalize on Twitter, you sending in our Discord private group here. Did the Palm already fill? This was like days after the Pomeranian had already filled. And it was the moment that I realized you truly had lost touch with the best ball common man, Pat, as we had all drafted our Pomeranians well by then.
Well, because I'd heard the Palm was dropping and then I never saw it. And I guess, it filled in 3 hours. So I just never saw. I wasn't really on Twitter because I was on vacation. I told Davis that, I was I was in California. He's like, man, you really lost touch with the common man.
Davis is out here.
It wasn't my best moment.
Yeah, I mean, Davis is out here. He's getting up early every morning to do Underdog Cardio Club. He's drafting poodles. He's drafting everything. I said this on my Monday Best Ball Breakfast. I joke about the chasing Kerrane stuff. I think it is really a lifestyle for Davis at this point. It really has consumed him fully.
Well, I wish him the best.
Andrew Mack is giving us a peel behind the curtain. Palms are designed to fill in a day. I will say it was on 4th of July, I believe, too, that was released. The fact that so many people are just spending time, and it mainly gets filled by 50 slow drafters, right? So that means on the 4th of July, Independence Day, there's many Americans across the country individually registering for 50 slow drafts as a way to celebrate their patriotism. It's beautiful.
Yeah. They're lighting on the fireworks to celebrate getting in the Palm.
It's been 2 weeks since we last drafted. I think the team we drafted on Best Ball Breakfast 2 weeks ago was draft number 70. Haven't actually done a ton since then. I believe this one today will be draft number 83. But any other thoughts percolating in your head? Any drafts of legendary upside posts or kind of new metas as we're in this, what I consider kind of a dead period as far as news before training camp starts?
I have another post coming out. I'm planning to get it out tomorrow morning that I just need to edit now on it's part 3 of that series I'm doing on running back success rate. So kind of writing up some of the running backs. I'm trying to dial in my running back exposure a little bit based on these running back profiles. Because, at this point, it's sort of like fine tuning the bets on the players. And then a lot of news is going to happen. But I still think that's going to help us a lot, right? Like you want to know kind of what the player bets are, and then that'll help us react better when news shakes things up. I will say I did pass on Breece Hall to 311 yesterday. I did it specifically because I had taken Jalen Waddle, and I figured I should take Mark Andrews, who was also there, and an even bigger ADP value. But I have cooled off slightly on Hall just as we try to see if this Cook signing comes through, and I can get him at like a pretty significant discount going forward. I think he'll smash Cook, and that's not a concern. Like I will fucking hammer him if he's in the 5th round after the Cook thing, but why should I take him? And I wouldn't look at if I had taken Garrett Wilson, I still would have taken him at the 311. But that's one minor thing that I'm just trying to force myself to get, because I don't want to be underweight on Ramondre and Josh Jacobs and Mark Andrews and all those dudes.
Yep. Yeah. What you just said, like directly echoed what I said on Monday in the same spot where I passed on Breece Hall. I think it was, and I took Keenan Allen, I believe, was it? Because normally in my rooms, Keenan Allen isn't falling that far in the late 3rd anymore.
Right.
And it was that exact same thing where it's like Breece Hall is already one of my highest exposure running backs. And there's a very good chance we start to get cheaper Breece Hall. And it's like, I'm the same as you. I'm going to be hammering 4th round, early 5th round Breece Hall. So I'm going to start passing on him just during this specific window, because I'm with you. Like everything I read, I do think the Jets make the most sense, barring some kind of injury to another team.
Well, see, I'm actually skeptical. Though I wrote in the post, I was like, of course I'm skeptical. Like he's my highest owned player. But like in this spot, if Breece is there at the 309, I'm definitely going to argue for Breece. But yeah, it's like, because I think, the Jets report comes out. To me, it just looks like leverage. Like he's trying to get more money. We know the contract's on the table from the Dolphins. And then it's like, oh, the Jets are really interested. They're so interested. Like, they're trying to get the Dolphins to pay him more.
So Pat and I are underway in our Best Ball Mania draft. We got the 1-9, which has been an far too familiar spot for me. Pat, Eckler, Diggs go before us. AJ Brown, Bijan look like the best options here. You know me, always down to AJB, but what do you like?
I love AJB here.
Yep. Yeah, let's what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was getting my housekeeping in a row. The Ducks obviously get fed during the first draft on Wednesdays. We got the banner. The only thing still too, like, and it depends also what you do with the draft, like going back to Breece at pick 33. Obviously I'm with you and thinking he's a value there, but I just trying to play those ADP games right now. And I've been doing it. I've mentioned this with like the Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman. All things equal, I prefer Bateman, but I do think it's more likely we get cheaper Bateman through training camp than it is we get cheaper Flowers. And so I've been taking Flowers ahead of him for that exact reason. Bijan falls all the way back to us at 2-4, Chubb, Taylor, Barkley, Olave. What do you like?
I think we almost got to take Bijan.
Yeah. I wonder, that has to be maybe one of our badge bros, Chad, who has the sheet. I wonder how frequent Bijan and AJ Brown are paired together, because I guess sometimes in these rooms, Bijan falls a little bit, but AJ Brown has been pretty locked and loaded around pick 8 or 9, and Bijan's not normally falling to 16.
I think I've gotten it once. I think I might have gotten it yesterday because AJ Brown felt really late. When I saw that, I was like, oh, the poodle. And I was like, am I going to multi-table the poodle right now? I was like, you know what? I'm going to go sneak in at Best Ball Mania and see if that's a little less badges in there. I did a few yesterday. The first one I did, I think I was the only badge bro in there. And I got some pretty sweet values. I got Drake London in the 5th, like at the 310 or the 510 or something. And I think that was the draft where I got AJ. I think it was AJ Brown, Bijan. I'll check. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun start there. Chipsy says he has that, so we do have to stop duping him. You're right, Matt. I do need to do a coffee pour here. I'm feeling a little thirsty.
You going direct into the mouth?
Yeah. I'm trying to think here. We'll come up with a stretch goal where I pour directly into the mouth. Maybe a little celebration when we hit 15K subs. I should also mention before we forget, tonight we're going to have a fun ship chasing. We're going to have Chris Allen from Fantasy Life, who's been doing a lot of cool weather related research, which I think is, as you guys have heard me talk about on some shows, specifically with Brick, I think is one of the maybe more underexplored micro edges within Best Ball Mania. And so we're going to talk to him about some of that research, specifically about wind and even stadium height impacting wind. I mean, Chris is in deep on some of this weather stuff. So we're going to talk about that with him tonight and then hop in a Best Ball Mania draft. And I have a full day of Best Ball drafting on tap, 2 here, 1 on the Swolecast, and then 1 tonight with Pat and Chris on ship chasing. So Pat, I am excited for a full day of drafting here.
Me too. I'm excited to get Chris on ship chasing, which we haven't done. He's been, I mean, he was over at NBC with me for a minute. His stuff's awesome.
So looking at this room, you know, it is a friends and family room. We got JGFC, who's never not been in a draft with me. We got KZ, we got Connor, a bunch of people. I did tip you guys off in the Discord to use Drake London. JGFC said, you got Drake London in the 5th. What if I take him at pick 29 instead?
I literally got him at the 5'11". I just double checked that. It was nuts.
Holy cow, Pat. This is going to be a fun pick here. Right on the board right now, we have Ramondre, Josh Jacobs, Mark Andrews, and Breece Hall available, depending on what Pat Joyce does here at 3-8. My goodness. Ramondre does go. I think I'm a little more inclined to boost up my Mark Andrews here, but I want what you would do in this spot.
I would probably grab Jacobs because he's the biggest ADP value. I think he's the guy that's probably going to be like normified. You know, people are going to scoop. We're not going to get in August. We're not getting mid-3rd round Jacobs, right?
I don't
Jacobs
think so.
Is the dude who's going to be like on the. I've heard stuff like, oh, he's going on the 1-2 turn in like industry mock drafts, right? Like traditional fantasy football players come in. Josh Jacobs was like the top guy last year. You're getting him in the mid-3rd. Like, no, you're not. You're not getting him in the mid-3rd.
All right, but Pat, no Lamar detour here. We need to stay on the fucking straight and narrow after starting AJ Brown, Bijan, Josh Jacobs. I can't get buried. I can't have another Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham, Zeke Elliott draft. I can't do it, Pat. I can't.
No, we're done. We're done. It's a 2 detour. I'm familiar with the Wednesday at 10. It's 2 detours, not 3. We've taken our 2 detours. But like what? Like Calvin Ridley? Were you supposed to take Calvin Ridley? Or I guess Deebo Samuel. We could have taken Deebo Samuel and said, let's try to get one of Jacobs or Breece coming back.
Yeah,
because if Breece comes back, I'm gonna say we should take him.
No, he does go there. I would have been with you, Pat. We'd finally do the hyper fragile. I might even just be like, not even a 4th running back, dude. We just Bijan, Jacobs. Breece,
I've done that.
Yeah.
I kind of like it actually.
Yeah. Gibbs does go. I like Jeudy. I think you might be a little not as high on Jeudy though. Where do you?
I'm more into McLaurin than Jeudy. But I'd be okay with Jeudy if you want to go that way.
I mean, only little tiebreaker I do is just a small divisional thing with Jeudy and Jacobs. But do you want to play ADP game?
You have McLaurin and AJ Brown divisional as well.
All right, let's go Terry McLaurin here. I like Jeudy, but I'll get my Jeudy shares with Shawn because Shawn is very high on Jeudy there. What was I at McLaurin?
I have to say, I mean, like I know Shawn's really high on Jeudy, and he's not the only one that really likes him. I don't know. The whole thing kind of gives me like a little bit of heebie-jeebies with that situation. Like we just did this with Sutton. We were like, Sutton's the guy. You got to take Sutton. You can't take him over Jeudy. That's crazy. And, he's going in the late 3rd round, kind of very similar to this area. Jeudy was like more, 4 or 5. Now we're like, oh, Sutton. I mean, he's dead. They're having him do the Michael Thomas tape. I know it's just like these offseason kind of fluff reports, but like he's going to be out there. He's going to be kind of their ex, it sounds like, doing the little slant boy stuff. Jeudy is yet to really break out as like an elite guy, or really even a star. So I'm just like concerned we're doing the same thing again, where this is like an ambiguous wide receiver group plus Dulcich, plus a guy they just drafted. Tim Patrick's getting buzzed. Like, taking the most expensive Bronco just concerns me a bit. And then when we had Matt Harmon on ADP chasing, we were asking about Jeudy's route running, and he's like, I think he's kind of living off his college reputation. Like, he's not been an elite route runner. He doesn't rate, all that well in his in the success rate over expected that Sam put together. He was actually below expectations in that. So I don't know. I mean, he had a good run to close the year last year. He did some interesting stuff as a rookie. I don't think he's bad or anything, but McLaurin's getting the best quarterback play he's probably ever gotten. Even if Howell gets benched mid-season, he will still probably provide the best quarterback play that McLaurin's ever seen.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I still obviously agree with the ADP ordering of the Broncos. Sean Payton brings some functionality. But yeah, I mean, and Leone and Gretsch were talking about this on their projection pod and how quickly we've swung. And it is a bummer that you're not getting more of like a Denver uncertainty discount with, Jeudy, because this is just the meta on underdog with wide receivers. But yeah, I think those are very, very good points there. I'm just in on a Broncos bounce back in general. That I'm taking Mims. I have a lot of Sutton early. I've been boosting up my Jeudy lately. So I'm in on the Broncos in general. But yeah, cost adjusted, playing it through Mims, even cheaper. Dulcich, I think, is probably like the smartest way to handle the Broncos uncertainty this year. Godwin, Pittman, Evans, Addison, Dotson. I really don't think
we got to get a wide receiver.
Yeah. I know you don't like Godwin, but I'm good with any of these guys if you have a preference.
This is almost like getting Godwin in the 7th round. So I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah. It is funny. Yeah, Godwin directly at ADP in a piss boy draft feels pretty nice. So our team, we started, we got 2 running backs, Bijan and Josh Jacobs, 3 wide receivers, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin. Pat mentioned ADP chasing. Awesome episode with Matt Harmon on Monday. Check that over out on the Ship Chasing feed. Sam Sherman did a really cool way of kind of synthesizing some of his data, success rate over expectation versus man coverage, and trying to put it into a single number, which I know Harvard isn't necessarily always the fan of, but it led to some really interesting conversations as framing kind of reception perception data versus the ADP market, and kind of finding some guys who may or may not be undervalued relative to Harmon's charting. So check out that episode over there. And Pat, well, I've really been, I did my portfolio review on Friday. My take has still not changed, that I feel like from Calvin Ridley to Treylon Burks, like all these wide receivers in like rounds 4 through 7 are like in a similar tier to me. And I'm just at the point now where like whichever one of these wide receivers you want to take, Pittman, Dotson, Tony Pickens, Gabe, Quentin Johnson, it's like, they're all the same to me.
Yeah. I hear you. I think it's very flat. Dotson would be kind of interesting here as a double stack.
Yeah, I'm very much into that. I was talking, should we do Dotson here before we
let's do Dotson.
Yeah, let's do Dotson, pair him with McLaurin. I was joking with Spags on Splash Play because he has obviously just super heavy Colts bags, both Pittman and Anthony Richardson, and Pittman's actually his highest drafted player now. And I was telling Spags that the funniest thing that's going to happen now is that Pittman is going to be an absolute smash, but it's going to be with Gardner Minshew playing the majority of the games, and then Richardson bags die, but it's so Pittman can live. And the more I've been thinking about the Colts, and even the way I do handle my few Richardson teams, like I prefer it through Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, and Jelani. I really do like Pittman far, far more if you tell me Minshew's the quarterback.
That's how I am. Yeah, I think I'm hoping that you're exactly wrong and that Richardson lives, but Pittman has to die for that to happen. I haven't taken it. I think I'm definitely overweight on Pittman. He's not near like one of my highest drafted, but I take a lot of, I've got 13% Pittman. So I'm not out, but I take a lot of Richardson. Richardson, sometimes in best ball, you end up in these situations where you're like, all right, it's time for me to cool off. And then the market's like, it's time for us to cool off too. So you're like, oh, wait, okay, I guess it's not time for me to cool off. So I'm still taking him, man. I think I got 10th round Richardson the other day. I pushed him around the corner of a draft when I was in the late 9th. I was like, let's see if he comes back around, and someone grabbed Geno Smith over him. And I just grabbed Richardson. I think Anthony Miko, I saw tweeted out that he's his favorite quarterback to take when he doesn't have a stack set up. I completely agree. Downs becoming free has made me only want to take Richardson more. Jelani Woods is also free. Michael Mayer also free. So you can get literally just take Richardson and you can go Downs, Mayer, Woods to close out your draft. You got to reach now a couple rounds for Downs to do that, but you just like can sit back and get a double stack bring back on Richardson with your last 3 picks. Have no correlation with him to that point, and I don't know. I've literally done that, and it feels pretty good. So still taking.
I did just want to check while you were talking there. I was pulling up the Fantasy Life Best Ball Hub. I don't have any McLaurin Dotson, and this was one of the things when I did my portfolio review too. Is for as much as I love the Steelers this year, and I have a lot of Pickens and Deontay Johnson, and obviously Pickett and Freiermuth too. I realized I didn't have any Deontay Johnson and Pickett or Pickens together. And so similar to that, where you kind of have to force yourself to take those guys at the 5-6 turn, to get them. I kind of like this too with the McLaurin and Dotson, where it's like, I have a lot of Howell. He's like my second most drafted quarterback. So I want to make sure I do have some Dotson and McLaurin pairings together, which we were able to accomplish here. Although we were about to be on the clock at 7-9, the wide receivers have gotten eaten up. Pat, we might be forced into a hyper fragile build here. Actually, no, I'm down with one of the Ravens wide receivers. I forgot they were here.
I think we do that.
So do you want to push back on my take? Because like I said, I've been taking Flowers ahead of Bateman, thinking it's possible we get cheaper Bateman if he's slow to be out on the field in training camp and preseason, which is kind of the tea leaves I've been reading, but I'm open to alternative opinions here.
I'd take Bateman first. I just think he's the better bet. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with his price. I think closing line value will be Bateman's ahead. There may be a period during training camp where you can get even cheaper Bateman, but I don't know. It just feels like a little like maybe this might be the cheap Bateman, because the market reacted already to, it's weeks ago now that the report about his foot and everything. Yeah. Maybe it's just like out of sight, out of mind, but and the market will bump him down a few rounds. The market is weird. Like Pacheco seems to be dropping now because he's going to miss the start of training camp, but we've known that for like a month, but it wasn't priced in maybe, and now it's getting priced in. But I'm just taking Pacheco, even though I'm like, is the price going to drop further? Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm having trouble with a couple of those spots where it's like Pacheco's expected to be fine for the season, but he might miss a couple weeks of training camp. Bateman's expected to be fine for the season. This like cortisone thing doesn't seem to be anything serious, but maybe there's a window that I'm kind of sacrificing of even cheaper Bateman.
That was like when I read those reports, it was that he's on track, he's fine, but it is really at risk of aggravation, and the team's going to be kind of careful bringing him along. So it was mainly just like, hey, he's getting limited reps at training camp. They sit him out a little bit, and then it's like Zay Flowers looks incredible. Dude's been running on the beach shirtless with Lamar Jackson, and it's like we've already seen the rookie thirst. I just wouldn't be surprised if of the two, I think it's more likely Bateman gets discounted. But again, we're splitting hairs here. I do
more likely Flowers gets steamed for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just not that into Flowers. So the Flowers scheme. Yeah. But it's certainly it's a good thought.
All right. Shout out Mark, who got in the draft for us, badged up last week, ready for a proper piss room here as he takes Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, some nice running back values there after starting 0 RB. Pat, let's start figuring out what we are going to do here. Deshaun Watson, Pacheco, Connor, Cook, Javonte, Tua, just like a truly gross section of the board.
Yeah, I think we should probably grab a running back. Like I said, I'm taking Pacheco right now, but I don't know how you feel about it. I would guess we have 2 running backs, so we could skip this. Do you see anything? I don't really see anything.
I mean, we could do Watson and try to get.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Let's grab Watson. David Njoku, chance he comes back to us, maybe not right at ADP, but I've been trying to get a little bit more Deshaun Watson. Obviously, I prefer it when I can do it with Elijah Moore or Njoku, which we might not end up with either there, but flat portion of the board. And then you also look, Pat, one thing I do often in these spots where I decide, do I want to take a detour for quarterback or take a quarterback in these mid rounds? AJ Brown, Hurts is gone. McLaurin and Dotson. Yes. Could we discuss Sam Howell? But I know he's not your favorite. Bateman, Lamar's already gone. Godwin, we don't want to deal with the Bucs situation. So it's like, we don't have a lot of options for stacks. So this actually seems like a good time to take a quarterback. There is some stuff we can do with DPJ late or and other pass catchers there. So Watson, I think just considering this board and how flat it was, I think made sense.
Yeah, and Watson's a guy you can also do the bring back on pretty easily late. You have a couple different options there. Especially one of them is a tight end, and we don't have tight end yet. So I would really prefer to get Njoku, but this is why I have so much Richardson. Is this part of the board is super flat. I am willing to go with 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, but that means that I want to sit out this. Like I kind of had that thing of like, oh wait, we already have 2. We shouldn't be doing running back. So it's like, all right, if we're not taking, some mild values at running back, then what do you do? Right. And for me, the answer has been a lot of quarterback in this kind of general range.
The only thing I would have otherwise floated, as far as like you mentioned, like, okay, we could maybe take Pacheco, but we have these 2 running backs, like thinking about the archetype that fits well. That's generally where I'm looking at, like a Javonte Williams or a Zach Charbonnet. Like, who's a guy that has just massive contingent upside to where if things do break right, they have like top 7, top 8 RB, because we're going to be relying on Bijan and Josh Jacobs most weeks, who are the guys that could actually, jump them into our starting lineup. That would have been the only other consideration for me. But man, it's a tough portion of the board. I mean, look at these rooms. We got Sky Moore going at 95. We got Romeo Dobbs going at 97. Odell at 101. It's fucking disgusting, man.
That's some avalanche shit, dude. That's the no. Oh dear God, taking Odell Beckham in the 9th.
Yeah, exactly.
Romeo Dobbs at the 901 is one of the grossest things I've ever seen.
Njoku falling here at ADP to get our stack feels very nice, Pat.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank you to these rooms for being nice. By the way, I saw Zen become a YouTube member here. If you become a YouTube member and you unlock the Best Ball Value Hounds channel in the Discord, it's called Best Ball Breakfast channel in the Discord. I do set a ping alert when I hop in these drafts, which is how a bunch of these guys got in this draft, because I telegraphed it with the alert. You can check the pinned messages to get alerted. And so for all of my Best Ball Breakfast streams, the 2 on Monday and the 2 on Wednesdays, that's one of the perks with the membership, in addition to the Best Ball After Dark interview series, all that good stuff. So thank you, Zen, for joining. Pat, we are going to be picking here at 112. I'll recap our team through 9 rounds. Deshaun Watson at quarterback, Bijan and Josh Jacobs at running back. We got 5 wide receivers, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Jahan Dotson, Rashod Bateman, and Njoku at tight end. All things considered, pretty rock solid team and very evenly distributed positionally. Yeah,
I think it's a pretty good team. I think we escaped through the avalanche. We got our guys. We got our 5 guys. Very solid 5 wide receivers. And I don't think we sacrificed too much to do it. We reached a little bit on Bateman, I guess.
Yep.
Not bad in this room.
I don't think there's anything we need to do at quarterback here, unless you wanted to set up like a backdoor Daniel Jones thing. Nothing.
No, I think it's a running back.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a reach, which isn't great in these rooms. But what do you think about Penny with the AJ Brown bet?
I love Penny. Yeah. And there's no guarantee he comes back. I mean, JGFC is going to be taking a couple here. Penny, I think, pairs super, super well with these 2 guys.
Right. Because if Penny's inconsistent and, who cares? He's going to have his weeks, I think. As long as he's healthy during training camp and impresses them. I mean, he's so explosive.
Is this breaking news? New York Jets on Hard Knocks. We aren't getting
my God.
cheap Breece.
We are if Cook now wants to go there to show he's not done.
Is this Someone correct me in the chat. Is this the most like intriguing Hard Knocks team from like a story angle that we've had in a long time? Like Aaron Rodgers is one of the most mercurial, weird figures we have going in the NFL right now. This is a team trying to shove the chips all in. We got young talent at positions. You got the New York market. You got intrigue about Dalvin Cook signing. Like, this is a good team for Hard Knocks.
This is a very, very, very good team for Hard Knocks. Yeah. By the way, I would like to defend Hard Knocks. Some people, Hard Knocks gets a lot of crap these days. Some people saying it's old. It's fine. They have a playbook that they run. It's a playbook that hasn't been updated, much like most NFL coaches. They just run the same plays over and over. But it's a good fucking playbook. It's fun.
Yeah.
So
it does. I've been mentioning this before, the Scott Fishbowl this week, the normal signifiers to football being back, and obviously fantasy is year round, but like Hard Knocks is like like you can feel the summer in the air. You can feel Sunday red zone when you turn on Hard Knock, and they just know the levers to pull, the cinematography, the fucking music. Like they know what they're doing and they do it well. And the wheel doesn't need to be reinvented.
They know what they're doing. I also think like the Lions season I thought was awesome. Getting a better sense of kind of who Dan Campbell is, and just like, you're not going to like learn that much from Hard Knocks, but I do think you can kind of gather like for me, it was like, dude, Dan Campbell like really cares. This dude, like, say what you want, but this dude is like invested. He's listening to his guys. I just thought, I don't know. There's like little nuggets in there
that was the infamous Amon-Ra rattling off all of the wide receivers who were drafted ahead of him clip too. Was a really fun one. Also, I was just remembering one of the old school Hard Knock episodes or seasons with the Jets was one of the best ones. That was when Rex Ryan was coaching. I always remember the clip, like Danny Woodhead, I think was like on the practice squad for the Jets. And he's like, Rex Ryan's watching him in practice. He's like, who's that little fucker out there? Who's that little fucker? And it's Danny Woodhead.
That's amazing.
We're about to be on the clock at 11:09 here. Let's see some interesting stuff. I don't know if we'd want to do the double week 17 game, or sorry, we don't have, for some reason I thought we had Garrett Wilson. We do not have Garrett Wilson. I don't know why I thought that. Eli Mitchell is on the board. Jamal Williams, Jerick McKinnon. I can tab over to wide receiver, Gallup, Mingo, Thielen. I kind of like Mitchell.
Yeah, Eli, I was just sort of waiting to see if he was going to get sniped. But I like the Eli Mitchell bring back on the Washington double stack.
Me too. And I mean, Mitchell really the last viable Niner for that as well at this point in the draft. And again, I think Eli Mitchell fits that mold of, sure, he's going to have some standalone value, but when we're drafting him in this build, you're playing for the contingent upside when Christian McCaffrey's not playing. And Elijah Mitchell is like serving as a bell cow back in one of the best offenses in football. I think that pairs really well with a double anchor RB start.
Yeah, like I don't know what Bijan Robinson's snap share is going to be, but like it's on the Falcons where, he might only need like a 40% snap share to get 30 carries. So there's like really not a need for volume on this team. What we need is guys who can explode into huge roles with contingency value or, like Penny being on an elite offense.
Is there anything you would want to do at wide receiver here?
Really,
Rice
man.
Pierce. I'm down to take like Kendre and be done at running back, or I'm down to do like Dolchich. I don't know. What do you want to do?
Kendre and be done at running back is somewhat appealing, and I don't see much else.
Yeah, because I do really think we're done at running back with 5 with this build.
We're done. Yeah, I would just uncheck it. We're fully done.
Yeah, Kendre gives us also that week 17 bring back with Godwin. So nice to get a little other correlation feather in our cap there. So yeah, a 1-5-5-1 build. Pat and I refusing to capitulate in the wide receiver dead zone. Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Bijan, Josh Jacobs, Rashad Penny, Eli Mitchell, Kendre Miller at running back, wide receiver, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Jahan Dotson, Rashod Bateman, and David Njoku at tight end there. I still like how this
amount of 1-5-5-1s.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, I kind of like it. Like if to get to 1-5-5-1, you've most likely attacked those two positions in areas of the draft that are good for those positions, right? It means you probably got one of the third-round running backs, then you really hammered running back through the late single-digit, early double-digit round area, which is a great spot for him. It means you probably got 5 wide receivers before, round 11-ish, and ideally before round 10, which we did here. So it's like, and it's taking advantage of late quarterback value, which I think there is some of, and late tight end value, which I definitely think there's some of.
Yep. I think one thing that's kind of fun too about the, in these builds, like if we could swap like Watson and Njoku for Daniel Jones and Waller in an avalanche room, I kind of like that just because we have 4 or 5 different Giants wide receivers we can take late. But I do like this idea of Watson and Njoku giving you access to elite onesie production while still accomplishing 2 other goals: wide receiver firepower early and scooping up good running back value. Whereas you're kind of, yes, does he have as good of a chance as being a top 5 quarterback as Justin Fields? No, but we do know that it's plausible. And if we're trying to keep up with these teams and not pass on really good value, I do think those kind of pairings in the mid tier, and you could extend Anthony Richardson to that as well, give you the chance to accomplish that at much cheaper prices.
Yeah, I agree. Watson's one of these guys I thought I was like overweight on, and I think I'm just even with. I'm dead even with the field on him. Yeah. But I think that might be a mistake. Like he's one of these guys where if he has a good season, then he could outscore Justin Herbert pretty easily. Or Herbert, I'm also optimistic about. So, not just him, but he can score. It's kind of like that cut just below the top. Like he doesn't have the Lamar upside. Like Lamar could be the quarterback 1 going as quarterback 4. And obviously the top 3 all have massive ceilings. I don't think Watson's quite there, but he's in that Herbert tier to me. I mean, I like him more than Lawrence straight up. Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. I think we should take DPJ here though.
Yeah, me too.
I was really sweating that he would make it back because it wouldn't feel good. We obviously weren't going to be in the Jerome Ford sweepstakes with this build. This would have quickly ended up being like a Cedric Tillman double stack late if we wanted to do something like that. So DPJ with Deshaun Watson. And this goes back to kind of the thing we were talking about Denver, right? Where there are the risks. Obviously on a team where we have Watson, we need the Browns to be good. But playing it through the 2 cheapest options, Njoku and DPJ, gives us a little bit more room for error than when you take Amari Cooper in the 3rd or even Elijah Moore where he goes in these drafts.
So what do you think? What are we even looking for here?
I think we're obviously tabbing off of
we're love a wide receiver.
Yeah, I was gonna actually, if Shaheed was here, I was gonna float him. I clearly love Tyquan Thornton. Otherwise, I think we need to wait. If there's any backdoor stacks we want to set up with a tight end, we could consider that. What do you think?
Could grab Jayden Reed and see if Love maybe comes back. I'd also be okay Thornton. I just feel like the team could use a wide receiver in the spot, given what we should have access to later.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do Jayden Reed here. Tyquan Thornton gets snapped up behind. Yeah, we should think about our in-game a little bit more. You are probably staring down the barrel of a Sam Howell team, Pat, unless we could figure out. The only other one would have been, because Matthew Stafford was already gone, because I was going to be like, maybe we do Higbee and see if there's something there. Obviously, with Jacksonville and Houston, you can set up some cheap backdoor stuff. I guess the other case for taking Thornton was that's just always the backdoor stack that's available there with Mac and those tight ends.
Maybe we should have taken Thornton. But I kind of like Reed.
Yeah. He's an interesting. Raise It says, can you guys talk through Shaheed versus Jayden Reed? I mean, 2 very different players. I would have preferred Shaheed there, building out our Tampa or our Saints bet there if he was there. But I don't know. Do you want to compare those 2 otherwise?
Pretty different bets. I mean, Shaheed's kind of a deficient deep threat, classic kind of better in best ball type of dude. I take him when I have Carr mostly, or some kind of Saints thing like we do here. Reed, not a great prospect, but a second round pick. And I think in a somewhat ambiguous wide receiver room, there's absolutely zero depth in that room. Like, he is the wide receiver 3 right now. And I think he could be the wide receiver 2 by the end of the season. So he's somewhat interesting to me, just based on, like, you know, he's got the draft capital and he's got an opportunity, and that takes it pretty far.
Yeah, the Reed versus Dobbs stuff is super interesting. You know, if whoever does win that job to be like on the field in 2 wide receiver sets with Watson is probably going to beat ADP a good bit. Obviously, a ton of Dobbs hype, partly because of Shawn writing a 5,000 word love letter to Dobbs on RotoViz, and now he goes in the top 100 of all my drafts, and also because he's been the buzz of OTAs there as well. But they're interesting. Like, Reed has better draft capital, but like doesn't have a lot of things we normally like from a prospect. Also, the Packers have been a little slow to bring on rookie wide receivers, but you could also say that's the Aaron Rodgers effect, and things would be different with Jordan Love too. So it's an interesting one. Jordan Love does go. We could very much consider a Derek Carr faller here, almost 30 picks past ADP. We do have Kendre Miller and a week 17 bring back. If you want to dance your way out of a Sam Howell selection later, Derek Carr is probably your best out to do so.
Well, I don't know that it rules out a Sam Howell selection.
It doesn't.
To be honest.
Yeah.
So I'd be fine with it. I think getting Derek Carr after Mac Jones, I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and normally, like, when there's these ADP fallers, if they're completely uncorrelated, I'm like, how do we win the tournament, you know, with this team? Whereas at least with Derek Carr, we have built out stuff with the Saints and the Bucks already. So I'm completely fine, you know, oohing that 30 pick ADP value.
Me too.
And it's nice when it works out that way. Like we said, we didn't have a lot of avenues for obvious quarterback options in this draft. So getting the ADP faller there in a correlated way feels nice. Our team now through 15 rounds, we got Deshaun Watson and Derek Carr at quarterback, running backs, Bijan, Josh Jacobs, Rashad Penny, Elijah Mitchell, and Kendre Miller. Wide receiver, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Jahan Dotson, Rashod Bateman, DPJ, Jayden Reed, David Njoku at tight end. I wonder, had we known that Derek Carr was going to fall, which we would not, I wonder if we would have taken Taysom Hill or Jawan Johnson instead of Jayden Reed. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, we would have, for sure.
Yeah. That's the only thing. And I guess I don't think we would have taken an unstacked Jawan unless we really were like, okay, we're going to try to set up Carr, but we wouldn't have worked under the assumption that Carr would have came back. So Taysom probably would have been the pick if we were thinking like correlation tight end there. But I think it's fine.
Is Conklin still there? Yeah, that's why I didn't really even think about tight end, because I was like, we're looking for bringbacks on our Watson thing, and you know, this is kind of a perfect build for Conklin anyway.
Michael Wilson going at pick 183 if you want to know that these drafts are drunk. I'm fine taking Conklin here. I mean, it's close to ADP, and it does give us that week 17 bring back on our big bet. Is there anything else you'd rather do?
No, this is kind of what, like, I was sort of reserving picks in my head for stuff.
Yeah.
That's why I was like saying I thought we needed a wide receiver, because I was like, we're probably grabbing Conklin late. We're probably grabbing, maybe Howell or another couple. We might do 2 late quarterbacks. So I was just like, I think we're going to run out of picks. And Conklin was kind of part of the end game I had sketched out in my head.
Yeah, I would say so on this build right now, we're at a 2-5-7-2. We got Watson double stack with DPJ and Njoku, Conklin bring back. We got Carr with Kendre and a Godwin bring back. We're still set at running back. Bijan, Josh Jacobs, Rashad Penny, Elijah Mitchell, Kendre Miller. Our other wide receivers, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Godwin, Dotson, Bateman, DPJ, Jayden Reed. So yeah, like structurally, I do think we have flexibility. We have 2 more picks And it's basically deciding, do we want the howl or do we go, we're going at least one more wide receiver. And then the question is basically, is it a third tight end or a third QB? I think is
That's
really
exactly
probably
how I
the
see it.
decision.
Yeah.
The fun thing too with like, you know, with the tight ends as you realize with how many guys, there's like, you can make a correlation argument for basically like every single tight end that's down there. So that will always jump out. I guess the last thing is maybe we start taking a peek here at the wide receivers and figuring out, is there another wide receiver that we
There
like
is
with
for
this
me.
build?
There's one
Okay.
that I like.
I
One
have
that
a
kind of
guess.
had penciled in.
Was it Robert Woods who just went at pick 193?
It was not Robert Woods. You know,
you
listen,
worried?
I'm just saying he should be in the draftable player pool. Everyone's acting like we can't take this guy. In the same breath, is there like, you know, taking Adam Thielen in the 12th round? I mean, what's going on?
I love this. I love these testimonials. This is my 64th BBM, says Sam, and it's the first time so far this season that I can admittedly say I was absolutely fucking devoured by the Avalanche this morning. Testimonials.
Can
Yeah.
which team is Sam? We should take a look at his team after we pick.
Yeah, Sam, tell us which one. I don't know if are you Sam Duel? I'm guessing Sam Duel. Is Steven correct that the wide receiver you ID'd was Hardman?
He is correct. I think Mecole Hardman's clearly the pick here.
Yep.
Double bring back now on the Jets thing. You know, Hardman's not going to be someone that you're reliant on over the course of the season very much, but this room is really strong at wide receiver, so we don't really care about that. We just need him to show up in week 17 as part of this game stack.
Yeah. Ryan pointing out on the Dynasty pod, Pat was adamant that the record show it was a single Rob Woods tweet and not a thread, which I enjoyed. I like that. The thread shows more intent than just a single post. Thank you for that, Pat.
I do think it's a key distinction. It's a key distinction. I did reply once with an additional thing. Like, here's the thing I was referencing. So you could argue it was a thread, but it was not a thread.
One other fun correlation angle here, Pat. The Jets played the Commanders in week 16. So it's nice that we can accomplish potentially the two. So what I would float here, Pat, that I'm debating between is similar how we did the Hardman and Conklin. I wouldn't be opposed to the Jayden Reed, Luke Musgrave kind of unstacked, getting that extra stack in there. Or obviously, I'm never going to turn down Sam Howell. Or if you have another tight end.
Sam Howell here. We have him double stacked. I think it's.
I'm not letting you change your mind.
Time.
I'm just clicking it.
I think it's the second time we drafted Sam Howell together.
Is 100% of your Sam Howell exposure on drafts with me?
No, I've taken him. I basically only take him in the 18th round stacked, which I think is, you know, I are people doing things other than that? Because that's what I don't really get that. But 18th round stacked, fine.
Before we recap this team, I want to hit this comment. Also incredible name here, Marvin Mom's YouTube thing. He goes, is there a reason why many experts like Jets Cleveland week 17 game? Aren't we concerned about possible Cleveland weather really limiting the passing game? Let me just give my thoughts and then I want to get Pat's. Like, first of all, my quick take, and I believe Pat is in agreement with me. We do not go out of our way to specifically target games. Like, Pat and I are never like, we want Watson in this game. The board fell to us where Watson was the best player available. And then we said, okay, if Watson's our quarterback, how do we win the tournament with this pick? Well, it's building out a game stack. The other thing about the weather stuff is the way I think about it is I'm not just blacking out Cleveland and Jets because there's a chance there's 20 mile per hour wind gusts. Now, if you want to tilt your exposures toward teams that have really friendly game environments in the playoffs, like the Vikings, like the Lions, like the Colts, I'm completely on board with that. But it doesn't mean you remove an entire game from your board. Anything to add on that, Pat?
Yeah, the only thing that we know is that the Jets play the Browns. That's the only thing we know about that game. We don't know how good the defense is going to be. We don't know which players on offense are going to be healthy or having good seasons. We don't certainly know the weather on New Year's Eve as we sit here in July. It is more likely that game's affected by weather than, other outdoor games. It's not in a dome. But we can't, it doesn't really make sense to just go, because what you'd have to do, I think, is basically go, I'm never taking Browns or Jets, which
Right.
I don't think that's a good idea. And then it's like, if you've taken a Brown and Jet, well, guess what? You need that game to be good, right? Like if you have like Breece Hall or Amari Cooper or whatever, like you need that game to be good. So bet that the game is good at that point. Just you've already made the bet. Like admit to yourself you've already made the bet, and then continue that bet. I have done stuff more where I take like Jerome Ford as part of those stacks because I'm like, what if they're great, offenses are great, and then it just kind of devolves into a run heavy week 17 and I've got Breece and Jerome Ford. Like I've thought about that a little bit. I also think you could do something. I don't know exactly how you do this, but I think you could go through your player pool and slightly dock every player on every team where you're really concerned about the weather. And I would say the Jets and the Browns would be pretty high on that list of like, maybe it's a reason to be a little afraid of Amari Cooper at the 3-4 turn, which is easy for me to say because I don't really like taking him there anyway. But like, I think you'd actually have to go and apply a slight discount to every player from every one of those games.
Yes.
In order to really factor in the weather.
And not just arbitrarily do it for one team.
Yes. And what you definitely don't want to do is say, well, I took Watson, but this has got to be a skinny stack because the weather's going to be so bad in week 17. It's like, well, then why'd you take Watson? You need your quarterback to have a good chance of going off in week 17. So if you really feel that strongly, then what you really should do is dock Watson and only take him if it falls way past ADP, but then build that game stack if you can, because they do play each other, and you could be wrong, and it could be a beautiful day. It could be a beautiful day in January. We don't know.
I think the simplest way to like put a bow on it is I think about these things much more from an overall portfolio standpoint than I do in an individual draft. In the individual draft, I'm just trying to draft the best possible team. And I do think reviewing your portfolio and then like I had a takeaway like, hey, I want a little bit more Vikings. I think they have the best setup across the board, even their points. Projected points weeks 15 through 17 relative to their projected point average 1 through 14. You see an increase. They play all these dome games. It was like, okay, I want to start not ignoring Jordan Addison as much as I have. Like I want to start making sure I'm clicking more. So like I'm thinking about it through a portfolio standpoint, but I'm not using weather to impact specific decisions in an individual draft. Because as David Kitchen once said, we just don't know. Let's recap this team here, though, now that it is in the books. A 3-5-8-2 team. Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, Sam Howell. The other thing, when you have three quarterbacks, we don't need all of these quarterbacks in the perfect game environment in week 17. Maybe Watson gets us there, and then Derek Carr does the rest in week 17. Running backs, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Rashad Penny, Eli Mitchell, Kendre Miller. We said we were going to stop after Miller, and we stayed true to that. Wide receiver, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Jahan Dotson, Rashod Bateman, DPJ, Jayden Reed, Mecole Hardman. Tight end, David Njoku, and Tyler Conklin. Pat, I would say other than the Jayden Reed pick, which kind of felt like both of us shrugging our shoulders, I feel like every other pick here kind of came together in a logical way.
Yeah, and I don't know what, in retrospect, we should have done. I think the board just didn't really do us any favors with that pick. And, like, honestly, Jayden Reed, from a macro sense, is a great pick. Like, this is a team that was pretty strong at wide receiver. We already had 6 wide receivers. We had 5 early. What do you want? You want an unknown dart throw rookie to add to that room. Jayden Reed's like my favorite guy to play that, but I don't hate him. So I actually like the pick in retrospect. And then we get the Carr things a little bit. I really wish we were able to get like a Juwan Johnson or something to get a pass catcher. But I mean, even though we have the Godwin bring back, that's probably not our game. I actually really like that we got Sam Howell with the double stack and the Eli Mitchell bring back, right? Like that game that's like exactly how that game goes the way you want. Like they run the ball down the Commanders' throats. At this point, Eric Bieniemy is so sick of seeing Jacoby Brissett for the last 5 weeks that he just throws Howell back in there and says, yeah, come on, young gun, let's get it done. And they go out blaze of glory with that double stack.
Hilarious. Travioli says he just went back and watched our first draft from 2 months ago. Steals on steals on steals. Maybe we should pull this up again as I've been doing a little bit more exposure review here. We did go pretty thin at quarterback in this first draft. Kirk Cousins and Bryce Young.
Wow.
Running backs, Gibbs, Pacheco, Charbonnet, Brian Robinson, a nice value at 120. Raheem Mostert, not good value, 121. Chase Brown at 216, decent value. Jefferson, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins. You can't get that start in drafts too many times these days. McLaurin, 48. Burks at 73. Mims, 145. Alec Pierce, 169. So some nice value on Pierce there. Dolchich at 168. Wow. Nice. Laporta at 193. So this is like, emblematic of drafting early, right? Some nice values in both directions.
Right. Man, we definitely went a little thin at quarterback here.
Very thin. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Kirk Cousins, Bryce Young.
I'm going to have to go rewatch.
I don't know why we're
Chase Brown should be a quarterback, right?
Yeah. Let's really quick look at Sam's team. Sam was who mentioned that he got brutally buried by an avalanche. Joe Burrow and Tua, very thin at running back for an avalanche. Cam Akers, James Conner, Kamara, Damian Harris, Mostert. Did you actually get buried? Hill, Higgins, Keenan, Tony. Okay. It was the Hawkinson, Akers, and Tua picks. Well, I'm trying to think how he got buried. I guess going from Tony to Thielen doesn't feel great.
I don't think he got
I think he's buried.
Fine. Just don't take Thielen. Just like you did get to 4 wide receivers through 7 rounds. So I don't think you fully got buried. I mean, Tony's not my favorite guy, but he does technically fit that description.
All right.
He certainly has enough upside to justify the pick.
I think in, making up for it, this was like a weird team because I thought like when I saw Akers as the thing that it was going to be even more loaded, but it was sneaking in that Connor pick and then the Hawkinson. It just goes back to those things, right? Like that third detour when there's, other wide receivers, like getting to that 5th good wide receiver, like you feel that, like the difference of having 4 good wide receivers versus 5, like those teams always feel bad to me.
Yeah. And I think this room is just going to really punish you at that 5th wide receiver spot if you don't get there, in a reasonable amount of time. Because it's just like and Mechie, right? Like Mechie, that's a very tricky guy to have as your wide receiver 6, especially if Thielen's your wide receiver 5. So yeah, I've sometimes gotten a little bit, loose with my wide receiver 5 if I feel like the room isn't going to crush me. Like if I can get Alec Pierce or Rondale Moore or Jacoby Myers as my wide receiver 5, I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But if I know that tier is going to get wiped out in a room like this, then I think you got to prioritize it.
Yeah, I liked how that running back room shook out for us, though. The Bijan, Jacobs, Penny, Eli Mitchell, Kendre, getting really nice values on Bijan and Josh Jacobs, and then being very kind of particular with the running back archetypes we wanted to add on to that. Anchor RB build, I think Penny, Mitchell, and Kendre are like the perfect 3 to tack on there.
The perfect 3, yeah. Because Penny's not contingent. He's just going to be inconsistent. Mitchell is contingent. Kendre, we're sort of like, I don't know. Maybe he's not contingent to start, and then he's contingent to the end, but certainly an interesting profile. So I love the running back room.
Yeah, Touch of Green bringing up a good comment here. A week from today is the infamous Millionaire Draft Day. Pat, of course, drafting his team on July. It was 18th, right?
Yeah. I'm going to be doing a stream. I need to get I'm going to message some people and see who I can get on. But my goal is to do a very long stream.
Yeah. I know Underdog is going to be doing some stuff to celebrate. I know Fantasy Life is hoping to do some stuff. It seems like everyone's going to be celebrating this stuff. So Pat, get your ducks in a row and get your
time for me to get my ducks in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. Feed the ducks, get the ducks in a row. Anything else? You said you were working on some stuff on Legendary Upside. Do you still have any of the Underdog credits kicking around for people?
I do actually. Yeah, I've got a few left, and you can do that by signing up. I'm still the 18th also marks the end of this early bird special that I'm running. Right now, you can get $30 off your first year at legendaryupside.com/early. That takes it to $69 for the year. That's going to run through the 18th and then be gone. So if you want to sign up, would recommend doing it and getting that discount. But then also, that is what gets you eligible to get the underdog credit. There's a form on the site under perk/Discord right at the top of the site. You go fill out that form, give me your username, and send that over to Underdog. You get a $50 underdog credit. So right now, you can get your first year essentially for $19 if you're playing on Underdog. So it's pretty awesome deal. And that it's going to be kind of completely gone by, I would say by the end of July, certainly. I think I'll be out of the credits and the deal will have expired as well.
This is a good question too. I kind of have this too. I mean, I assume we're going to have some form of the walkthrough on Legendary.
Some
Upside,
form of the walkthrough is
that'll be your DFS content, right?
That is, the walkthrough is a game-by-game preview, and I don't know if I'm going to do it quite exactly like I did last year, just for sanity reasons, but it's going to be like, my plan is to do a similar version, and like last year, it's applicable to a number of different formats. I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen. And so that's helpful for best ball drafts, helpful for DFS. I play a lot of small field DFS, so I'm thinking about that as I write the walkthrough for sure.
Awesome. Get subscribed to Legendary Upside. Also check out the YouTube. I got both of those linked down below. Pat's also been doing a very fun Dynasty podcast series with Davis Maddock and Jacob Sanderson. Even though I'm not playing as much Dynasty these days, I've been really enjoying listening to those guys talk things through. And it also like reframes how you think about some of these players from a season-long standpoint when you kind of factor in the potential trajectories.
I made a case for Sam Howell.
Okay, here we go. Pat's really coming around. Drafting Sam Howell with me.
Still not a great best Dynasty. But I think the payoff's much higher in Dynasty.
Also, as Robert mentions here, thank you, Robert, for doing my job as a host. If you're watching and haven't subscribed, please press that subscribe button located just to the left of the like. It is, of course, the thumbs up button, wink emoji. I think Robert has ulterior motives here, trying to get us to this $1,500 giveaway as fast as possible on all of these streams. After the show is over, if you leave a comment, that will get you entered into the giveaway. We are well on our way to 15K subs. When we do, I will draw 3 names out of the hat, 3 commenters to win $500 each. And you can enter up to as many times as there are draft streams. I have a playlist on the YouTube channel down below for all 150. And coming up next is going to be draft number 84 with Shawn Siegele. Pat, I'm going to let you go now. Good luck in your drafts the rest of the week here.
Later.
All right, peace. Welcome to the Best Ball Banana Stand, a weekly show hosted by me, Peter Overzet, along with RotoViz's Shawn Siegele. We hop in Best Ball Mania drafts. We battle wide receiver avalanches and try to make teams that have tournament winning upside, $3 million upside. Today, we are going to do it again with draft number 84 for me. Shawn, how have you been doing?
Good. And it's awesome to hear Pat say that he's on board with Sam Howell for really everything. But for Dynasty, he is the QB4 on our RV Triflex team. So maybe Pat is just trying to build up a little trade value for us there. But it's good to hear. It's good to hear.
Yeah, he's coming around. When we started, we had the 5-6 turn, or not 5-6 turn. We took McLaurin and then grabbed Dotson. And so the writing was on the wall. I tried to pretend like Pat had kind of his own, free will in the draft, but we always knew it was going to be a Sam Howell team.
Well, Jacoby Brissett is there. I mean, you can make that pick.
Oh my God, I never want to make that click. Speaking of never making that click, I do need to confess something to you, Shawn. On the thumbnail, it does say 0% Calvin Ridley, which I know you have. And before Monday was me too. But Shawn, I decided to give the people what they want. They've been begging me to take a Calvin Ridley share. So I started a team doing something I had not done at all. I got my first Mahomes Kelsey. Hadn't done that yet, and then took Calvin Ridley. So I just want you to know that combined, we are slightly over 0% Calvin Ridley now.
So I might need to go back in and update that article. Finally got the big article done using the Roster Construction Explorer to explain sort of our thinking with that draft. So that one was a lot of fun. Pete, if anybody wants to see it, get that on RotoViz. But I mean, that draft last week was extremely fun as well. So might have an article coming up on that one too.
Shawn, the random number generator gods have shined their beautiful face upon us today. We got the 101 for our draft. No more tough decisions of shrugging our shoulders and saying Travis Kelce. No more tough decisions of not like taking fake round one wide receivers in round one. We are going to get a wide receiver we like here today.
That sounds awesome. I haven't had too many 101s so far, so this will be a great time to build a little bit of that Justin Jefferson, to see what players go with it. But we actually got Jefferson from the 102, I believe, in one of our early drafts. So we do actually have a share together.
Yeah, I'm still definitely on board for Jefferson here, even if it leaves us collectively or together underexposed to Jamar Chase, but hard to pass on Justin Jefferson. I am below expectation on him here. I assume you have no problem if people take Chase over Jefferson, but just for me, from a portfolio standpoint, I'm going to have way more cracks at Chase with 2 spots than I am with Jefferson at only having 1.
Yeah, I think you have to go Jefferson there simply to get those shots at him in. And while Chase has a chance to, really emerge as one of the greatest players of all time over the next several years, and he's in this great offense with Joe Burrow, there are a lot of things you can do with that from a tournament perspective that might also be a little bit more interesting than what you can do with Jefferson. We're going to have one of these 2,000-yard, 20 touchdown seasons from Jefferson as we go forward here. You don't want to be out on those shares when it happens.
I want to circle back and mention Shawn wrote about a draft. I think it was the one we did 2 weeks ago. And that was a very fun draft. It was where we took JSN and Traylon Burks really early, I think at like the 4 or 5 turn. But it was one of those few teams where I feel like we successfully navigated the room and accomplished all the objectives. And it was very fun. Obviously we talked through our strategy as we're going, but we're often reacting in real time, not as much time for reflection. And Shawn wrote up a review of that team up on RotoViz. Highly recommend checking that out. Shawn's been putting up a ton of great stuff. I have a link down to his author page in the description there. Get signed up at RotoViz, one of the best bang for your buck values in the industry. And if you ever wonder why JGFC is always taking Romeo Doubs in the top 100 picks in our drafts, it's because of an article Shawn wrote. So get over there and you will get your sleeper wide receivers, your late round quarterback targets, and all kinds of other tournament theory as we try to figure out how to navigate this new landscape on Underdog. Shawn, have you had any other recent epiphanies, kind of draft thoughts as we're in, what I described with Pat is kind of this dead zone before training camp where we're just not going to get a lot of news here until stuff kicks off in the next week or so?
Yeah, I've been trying to really hammer on the guys that I think have this potential to rise another round or two before that happens. And so, you don't want to chase prices, but trying to figure out ways to get as much value out of that as possible. So you're getting the price that you think is going to go up, but you're also trying to get them in value spots and then make that work with the builds and with these game stacks that we're looking to do. I had a draft last night that was the most utterly bizarre one that I've been.
Really?
Yeah, I got Bijan at 15, Mark Andrews well below ADP, and then it was the bizarro draft of these drafts that you and I do, where I was getting all of our preferred wide receiver targets like a half round below ADP, and it just didn't even seem real. And so I'm trying to figure out I'm in the right contest. It was a lot of fun to be able to take these guys around or half round below as opposed to like a full round ahead.
It is really interesting. Because one thing I've said, people hear me caveat my drafts a lot in my rooms, in the wide receiver avalanche rooms. And then some people will push back and be like, that's all of Underdog draft rooms these days. Everything's wide receiver crazy. But that isn't true. Like I did a draft on, was it Friday or Saturday night with Eagles, and Nick Chubb went at pick 7. Najee went at the 2-3 turn. You can get these really different rooms where people just have different player preferences, different structural stuff. And it can get you into very different builds than you're able to get in even a quote unquote normal draft. So I relish those moments, Shawn, because I don't get quite as much of them, knowing that people are bum hunting my drafts, but you got to savor those whenever you can, because the ones we have to deal with here aren't quite as easy.
Yeah, you draft sort of late at night, West Coast time. And I mean, you'll get people in there just grabbing your quarterbacks for no reason, but you'll also get some really cool values.
Yeah, speaking of really cool values, none going to happen here at wide receiver as Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, T. Higgins come off. Patrick Mahomes does go. We're on the turn here. I do have your ranks pulled up. Wide receiver would be dipping down to Keenan. I'm curious what you would like to do here at this spot.
Yeah, I'd be good with going with both Hall and Stevenson. I'm probably going to move Hall down a little bit with the risk, that they do drop somebody else pretty dangerous into that group. But I don't really see a different path in this particular draft. I think that the 2-3 here is too early to go with Keenan Allen. It's too early for me to go. I mean, I just don't really like making that Josh Jacobs pick. Although we could reach ahead for some of the wide receivers that are really late and get them with Justin Jefferson, which might be interesting. If you have a wide receiver you really want there, I'm certainly fine to make a big reach. But it does seem like Hall's probably the way unless you have a guy.
No, I don't have a guy. I do think the thing you were bringing up is a little bit interesting of like which wide receivers aren't typically paired with Justin Jefferson. I'll see people, grab Christian Watson, to get that week 17 and hopefully a unique pairing. But yeah, you won't see a Deebo Samuel that often paired with Justin Jefferson, just those guys that are tethered. I think you could say Jeudy as well. Judy's not normally coming back to the 4-5 turn, but and I was really struggling there because I was mentioning with Pat too, I do feel like the Jets are the most likely to be in the Dalvin Cook sweepstakes if something happens before the season starts. And so I've been trying to pump my brakes on Breece Hall saying, hey, if Dalvin Cook goes there, I'm going to like Breece Hall just as much, if not more, at those new prices. So I'll take my foot off the gas with Breece and just chill out for now and see how this Dalvin Cook stuff unfolds. But I'm with you too. I don't know what other way there is to go in that spot other than Jacobs. If you do want to do the Jacobs Stevenson pairing.
Completely agree. And one of the things I do think they're going to use two running backs, maybe more than seems rational at the same time. I mean, there are going to be a lot of ways in which that's good for Hall. I mean, his efficiency on the touches is just going to be absolutely insane. He was in a draft that Ben and I did together that I'm writing up, and just continue to describe him as this combination between Le'Veon Bell and Jonathan Taylor. And it's really hard to pass that if you don't have another clear choice. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is there's certain spots of the draft that I always feel like are kind of flat. Pat and I found ourselves in the 8th, 9th round after the wide receivers came. And, but sometimes you find yourself in a uniquely flat spot where a lot of people are very excited to pick at the one hole. I think in this specific dynamic of a wide receiver avalanche room, it is a little trickier spot than meets the eye, especially because sometimes you just kind of shrug your shoulder and are like, okay, I'll take an unstacked elite quarterback, and try to figure it out from there. I do think you have to be kind of really intentional with what do I want to do with the rest of this room and how am I going to accomplish that, as opposed to kind of just shrugging your shoulder and taking the top of the ADP heap.
And I do like to mix in some elite QB builds, even though that's not my preference. I don't think that's going to be the winning play. Blair Andrews has a great article up on window QB over the last couple of days, kind of working through, what the thesis for that has been, how it's worked at underdog, which hasn't been as good as some other best ball formats, but why it's likely to bounce back. Obviously, I have the piece on the late breakout quarterbacks, but there's a very easy way to understand how the elite QBs, especially in the playoffs, even if they have lower playoff advance, that they give you this big trump card. But I do almost exclusively like to play the elite guys with one of their top receivers.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And, it was weird. I did my portfolio review on last week and looking at that stuff. And, I did realize I had no Kelsey Mahomes. And, partly is because I'm with you on preferring to attack stuff through the later QBs. And then also just knowing when you take those two detours away from wide receiver right at the top, it's really, really hard to recover. That said, I don't want to be a full fade on those. And I know one thing you've written about too is just how a lot of the ways that those elite QBs are going to work is if they are supercharged with their, top pass catcher. So I almost feel better about like Mahomes with Kelsey than I do, Kelsey by himself. So I am going to mix those in a little bit when it makes sense, but it is really hard to pass up on some of the other options in rounds 1 and 2.
It is. And we did a Kelsey Burrow team last week, and that one was a lot of fun.
It was fun and challenging, right? It doesn't like the draft we did 2 weeks ago, the one you wrote up, like that one pieced together better because you can save some of those slots for the late round quarterbacks later. We are about to be on the clock here at the 4-5 turn, looking at the top of our ranks. I do have Shawn's ranks loaded in, Shawn and Dubner's blended ranks over at RotoViz. Couple veteran wide receivers at the top of the heap: Hopkins, Godwin, JSN, also here at the top of your ranks. Anything else you would like to do?
Yeah, we could also put Hawkinson in there and continue with that. We did that last time. I don't have a lot of Hawkinson, but I do have him with Jefferson. And I mean, as we look through the playoffs, if those guys are going to be, this is going to be the team that does it for us. I think that is an interesting mix. We've talked a lot about how when we have an avalanche draft to not do the tight end, right? That we have a lot of tight end options late. When you go through my ranks and the draft develops, it's usually tight ends who are there. This draft hasn't been quite as avalanche-y. I do like Chris Godwin right here. I don't think that we're going to get as wiped out at wide receiver. Now that's sort of famous last words.
Famous last words, yeah.
But I think that the way that this is developing here with those 2 early running backs, I think we can take the tight end. We're going to get some wide receivers we like over these next couple of rounds. And being able to grab 2 of them at the next turn, I think, is something that, we're not going to get the values necessarily out of the one slot, but we can take a couple of guys, put a little bit of pressure on the rest of the room. If we reach out of the one, that's offset by some other advantages.
Yep. So we are through 5 rounds here. Justin Jefferson, Ramondre, Breece Hall, TJ Hawkinson, Chris Godwin. I do like, I always start to get a little nervous of like, okay, we took our 3rd detour, but one objective that I wanted to accomplish down the home stretch with my overall portfolio is getting a little bit heavier on the Vikings specifically. And I do not have, and I can pull up the best ball hub here over at Fantasy Life to see how much Jefferson and Hawk I have together. I'm guessing it's not a lot because I'm normally worried about getting buried there, prioritizing wide receiver in the early 5th and saying, hey, there's tight ends I like later. But looking at the Vikings schedule, who I think have the best fantasy playoff schedule of any team, game environments, high scoring potential shootouts, like I want to be tilting my portfolio towards some Viking stuff because I do think things set up really well for them. So I'm definitely on board with grabbing Hawkinson here. And like you said, it will probably put us in a spot where we got to get creative with some wide receivers. One other element to think through, because we have the double anchor start, that also means we are less likely to need as many bullets on 0 RB targets after pick 100. That could potentially free us up for a Kirk Cousins pick, maybe a Kirk Cousins slide in that range where maybe in a 0 RB build, you're prioritizing running backs otherwise. So I think this sets up well for us structurally because we aren't going to end up with any QBs in the first 10 rounds.
Exactly. And even though, other members of the draft can very easily decide that Cousins is going to be someone, even unstacked, who works really well, you are probably pushing his price down. And that's one of the reasons why I like to make that Hawkinson pick too, is to not have to maybe pay full freight on Cousins. I don't really love him at ADP, but he's someone who, from a tournament perspective, could really do some nice things. You mentioned the schedule that they have. I think that there are also some cheaper ways to play the Vikings through the playoffs that make that kind of move fun as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking at this board, trying to see if anything else interesting going on. We do see both the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase drafters passing on Burrow. So Burrow does slide all the way to pick 58. They're unstacked, but hard to pass up on Burrow at those prices. And now we start the 6th round with a very familiar string here, which is a ton of wide receivers coming off the board. DeAndre Hopkins sliding to 61. I did want to ask you about him because he was near the top of your ranks when we were on the clock. Obviously a wide range of outcomes. It's like, oh, the Chiefs are back in the mix for Hopkins, or he could be on the Patriots or Titans. Those are two pretty wildly different, team situations for his 2023 outlook. How are you handling this Hopkins stuff right now?
I think I'm fine waiting and just getting the shares once we know, but I also don't think that any of the landing spots are necessarily daggers to where if you select him, especially after ADP, that you're necessarily going to regret that. And certainly a couple of spots are very, very high upside.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it almost seems polarized, right? There's like not too many middling outcomes. I guess like maybe him going back to Cleveland, that one was floated out, or not back to Cleveland, but reuniting with Deshaun. Whereas like, as much as we like some of the prices on the Patriots and the Titans, it's like those are going to be some of the bottom offenses relative to how many points we expect them to score compared to like the Bills or the Chiefs. It is pretty wild, that range of outcomes there. So we're about to pick at the 6-7 turn. Our team here through 5 rounds, we got Ramondre and Breece at running back. We got Justin Jefferson and Godwin at wide receiver, Hawkinson at tight end. Have seen a lot of wide receivers go, but also still a ton of nice options here. I like the 2 guys at the top here, depending on what It's Just Port does, Pickens and Quentin Johnson. Anything else jumping out to you? I know we also always love DeAndre Swift here. Kadarius Toney does go.
I was going to mention Toney as being the other guy that we could realistically look at. I think that taking the 2 receivers to the top probably makes sense. I've been getting a lot of Swift, been getting him below ADP occasionally. This is probably not the right draft for him, even though, there's never a bad draft for DeAndre Swift.
I know. It feels like a lot of my drafts now, I'm like, I want one of Swift or Penny in every draft. Pat and I just took Rashod Penny. I've been drafting a ton of Swift and Penny in the weekly winners format. But yeah, let's go ahead and take George Pickens and Quentin Johnston here. You kind of foresaw this dynamic early on in the draft, knowing, hey, we're probably not going to like the wide receivers necessarily at pick 96, but we're going to feel pretty good about the 2 we get at the 6-7 turn here, even after an avalanche in the 6th round. So our team now, we add Pickens and Quentin Johnston to Jefferson, Godwin, Ramondre, Breece, Hawkinson. Feel like we're on track here for a nice team.
We are. And it's another situation where we have created at least one opening at quarterback. And so that is nice. Doesn't necessarily tie us into it, but we want to have that path open to us as well.
Yeah. That was another thing that happened with Pat and I with our draft before, where we just didn't have a lot of quarterback options, ended up being in a really flat portion of the draft and took Deshaun Watson and then kind of built things out from there in a backdoor fashion. With this draft, we're adding in some potential stuff for quarterbacks. You can do stuff with Ramondre and Mac Jones. You can do stuff with Rodgers and Hall. We got Cousins. You can do stuff with Pickett. So we have a lot of avenues here. Speaking of that, are you doing anything with the Bucs quarterbacks? Because one of the things you wrote about in your late round quarterback article, a simple screener of which of these late round quarterbacks actually have elite weapons and guys that can elevate the quarterback if they're maybe not, a top 5 talent. I think you could argue that the Bucs and Evans and Godwin do have that weaponry that would make the quarterback necessarily interesting. That said, there was no room for Baker Mayfield and Kyler Trask in your article. How are you thinking about the Bucs overall?
Yeah, that was not a situation I initially want to touch. I think those guys are interesting when you think about Superflex. I like to really take a ton of risk in various Superflex drafts. You can make the move there. The note about Mayfield and the weapons, I think, is a really good point, because if you're going to get Godwin and Evans, and the article I'm writing up right now with the draft with Ben, we got Evans like more than a round below ADP, which I feel like his pricing now, even though I don't have a ton, is almost as absurd as the pricing was last year when he was really expensive. The problem there is you're not going to get any rushing value from Mayfield, unlike some of the other late guys. And then, they could be bad. And if they're bad and he gets benched, he's had a hard time kind of staying in there. Injury risk, benching risk. But if you're talking about the 18-12, then if your team is set up for it, you could certainly look at that. It's nice to have an option in your last pick if you need to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, the thing you you're also looking for something a little bit added. Not only do they have weapons, I don't want to like paint it as if it was that simple of a screener, but also looking, hey, these guys have some rushing upside, which we know can help. Or maybe in the case of Purdy, maybe not as much rushing upside, but just such an efficient offense and so many scoring opportunities. You want like that one extra thing. Whereas I think you could argue with those teams, even though the quarterback situation is maybe, at least how the market's perceiving it, a little sketchy, there's not as much team level systemic risk. Whereas the Bucs, there's like legit implosion risks. Let's just pack it in. Let's play for the 101. I see that far less likely for some of the other teams you've written about, the Falcons, the Commanders, the Niners, and the Steelers. So that would be another key differentiator there with me lumping in the Bucs.
I like the late guys. I hope that what you just described right there works perfectly.
We are about to pick here at the 8-9 turn. Wide receivers flying off the board. A couple running backs you and I both love that I actually think pair very well with Ramondre and Breece Hall and James Cook and Javonte Williams. I don't see anything we need to do at quarterback or tight end here. We also, Dobbs is not going to come back in this room, does give us access to that bring back. What would you like to do in this spot?
Let's go Dobbs first and then make that second decision.
Okay, I am cutting it a little close there, Shawn. That one was on me. Normally it's on you cutting it close. That one was on me. We do get Dobbs here to lock that up, who, he's got to be top 100 pick in our rooms. That's just what has to happen. What do you think though for this next pick? I assume we're not going to go wide receiver. It's a running back pick.
Yeah, what do you think about Javonte Williams? The news on him has been, I think, very positive. I really look at him, even though you have this price that is much, much later, as a potential third anchor. I mean, it's weird to say, and I mean, obviously that's not really what it is from a structural perspective, but you're talking about another player and maybe in a better situation than Breece Hall we took at the 2-3 turn, where you're getting one of the best running backs in the NFL in an offense where the play caller has created a ton of value for running backs. And I mean, even if it's a little bit skewed to the final 2/3 of the season, which again, we have an issue because that could be the same thing with another one of our running backs. But I mean, the upside there is absolutely immense.
Yeah, we also get playing the week 17 game through Quentin Johnston and Javonte Williams with Denver LAC, which is fun. I had written up the Javonte Williams quotes for the Fantasy Life newsletter. It was a really interesting clip. He was basically at a camp he was hosting with Patrick Surtain and was asked about how he's doing. He's saying, feeling great, ready to run violently. I'm ready for training camp, ready for week 1. And then they were like, a reporter said, hey, do you think you'll actually start week 1? And he just kind of shrugged and said, it's up to the Broncos. It's up to the staff, what they want to do. So at least it's good to know that he's feeling good, that he's on track. I know a couple Twitter doctors, I believe it was Jeff Mueller, said that he believes he's ahead of the timeline that J.K. Dobbins was on. And I know Dobbins has been a popular comp for people, with Javonte being like, hey, look how slow he was to get going. Then he was limited. Knowing that he is ahead of the Dobbins timeline, I think is encouraging. And then it goes back to the same dynamic Pat and I were talking about, where we had a double anchor RB start with Bijan and Josh Jacobs. Like, I want to be swinging for the fences with these other picks that we're tacking on here, and that's what we did with Penny, Eli Mitchell, and Kendre. Here, having Javonte with Ramondre and Breece Hall, I mean, the play is that you have 3 guys that could be top 5 running backs on a given week in the fantasy playoffs.
Exactly. And the other thing I was looking at there that didn't quite come to fruition, right before our pick, Jameson Williams went. And even though Dobbs is a little bit of an ADP reach and Williams is someone who obviously not going to be playing for a while, and when you're trying to build out the wide receiver group, that can feel a little bit tough, because I've had a lot of success through the years by taking risky players and saying, let's be patient. Let's put together the whole team. You have to have enough overall talent that you can withstand some stretches where maybe you don't have all your guys, but you want to have the best team down the stretch. You want to have a super team for the playoffs. You obviously can build that in with the game stacks and that type of thing, but you also want it just with the player talent there. I think he would have been interesting because he has that week 16 game with the Vikings. You talked about the Vikings and this playoff schedule. If we could have put together a situation where each week we had someone coming back and was going to blow up opposite those guys, that part would have been fun. He did go right before our pick.
Yeah. That was an interesting one there. And the thing is too, and it's again, going back to that conversation in my rooms versus other, just the normal landscape. We are starting to see the push up of these secondary wide receivers. We talked a lot about the cliff. I kind of define it as when Bateman and Flowers come off the board. You might have your own definition, but most people agree in that relative spot. And because drafters are looking for wide receivers there, guys like Sky Moore, we're going to start to see training camp buzz, really push these guys up. And I think Dobbs is going to be a guy, if he builds on what he was doing in OTAs, maybe a guy like Jacoby Myers starts to get pushed up more too. But drafters need guys in this range. We do get the discount on Kirk Cousins now. To me, he feels like a logical pick with this build with one of the two. Or do you have a galaxy brain fade on Kirk here?
Well, I mean, I'm always tempted to push him all the way through, but that probably isn't worth the risk. It's one of the things where you can't push him to a massive discount when you're on the turn because there's just so many picks coming back. So yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, maybe if we had Jordan Addison and we had just cornered the market on it, but you are going to see the Addison drafter be interested in a mega cheap Kirk Cousins. Who do you like, though, with this next pick? Jacoby is sitting here. We also have some running backs. We do like anything you're seeing here.
I'm good with any of those running backs. Also, do you want to look at the full wide receiver group there?
Yeah, Jacoby, Zay, Rondell, Tyquan.
We've got a decent amount of Herbert together, but I do think that's kind of the play again here.
Yeah, we do have a lot there. I was trying to see if we had any other kind of correlation stuff. I guess we could have done I think that was the pick too. I'm also getting reoriented, Shawn, because I've been drafting off of ADP in my drafts. And so this is the one draft I do with ranks. So I'm constantly trying to be like, oh, do we need to take this guy now? Or is he just pushed up in your ranks relative to what the rest of the draft room is looking at?
Yeah, it is an interesting dynamic because until we started doing these drafts together, I always drafted off ADP. And so you do have that dual element where you're looking back and forth. And like I mentioned in the draft last night, it's like all the top guys on my board are also the ones who are falling. And if you get 11 guys who are fading your targets, it's perfect.
Shawn, I want to ask you this question because I'll pull it up in the chat. I get this asked a lot. I have my answers and thoughts on it. I also am being completely transparent that I'm, making content and not trying to necessarily build the most perfect best ball portfolio, even though I think there's so many benefits that I get from drafting with so many smart people. But what are your thoughts on, and you can even do it to just our drafts, but the idea of streaming our drafts, the difficulty that comes from kind of talking through some of our intentions. Do you think it lowers the EV of these teams? Like, how do you actually think about this in practice? And let's even narrow it down to just the teams you and I draft on stream.
Yeah, I think that it certainly changes the dynamic. So you have to have a different plan. And as I mentioned last week, I think that can in some ways give you a better plan. It can certainly help the plan when you're in the softer rooms. Then I love that part of it. I do think that not being able to maybe discuss some of the picks later who are going to work and how we might push different positions or different guys in order to make the draft work, you're just limiting some of the options. So I think that it does make it tougher. I think that when you're drafting like this, you are giving away some advantages you would otherwise have. I do think too that a few of the players that you have made really good pitches for, I mean, you can pull up our tools and look at the underdog ADP and see those guys as the biggest risers. And obviously there are going to be multiple elements to that. There are going to be, there are news on some of the players that is moving them. There are other people who have them moving in their ranks. There are projections that are capturing some of it. But when there's so much focus on ADP value, and I really like drafts where I'm able to get the ADP value, but I'm also not obsessed with it because I think drafting off of my rankings through the years has been really helpful. I like the guys that I'm going after, but if those rankings, if you discussing those players is moving them up multiple rounds, I mean, you're creating a dynamic where they can't outperform by nearly as much. And that part of it too, I mean, so it's going to cause some issues, but as you mentioned with the content and then just staying invested mentally and not going on to autopilot with these drafts, mean, that's a balancing factor to where you're going to keep getting better and you're going to keep coming up with solutions. And I mean, even really good drafters, if you're seeing the same thing and the same advantages in every draft, it's hard to not kind of get stuck just playing those.
I think that's such a good point. I really do. I'm sure I've had a few moments on stream where I've gotten complacent or distracted, but for the most part, you do have to be hyper engaged with what you're doing, what you're building. And the kind of the other thing I've said is I think it's going to be like harder to maybe advance some of these teams just because we're drafting with so many sharp players who are building smart, logical teams as well. But the teams that do get through, I'm going to be so excited about. So that's kind of the trade-off too, which is funny too, because that's kind of historically, when you looked at zero RB advance rates, a little harder to get out of there, but then you build these monster teams down the stretch. So I'm always willing to sacrifice a little advancement for some superstar teams. Kendre does come all the way back. I was going to mention him before. He was the one I bit my tongue on because we do have that Godwin week 17 correlation. Anything else though, jumping out as the first click here?
No, I mean, I think that is the really clear play. I love getting him on these teams. Another very wide range of outcomes type of play. But when you're looking at ceiling, I don't know how the most recent news with Kamara is going to necessarily affect his opportunity, but I still really like the player, the team, the situation. I mean, he could easily be that guy who is top 5 across the 3 playoff weeks.
What do you like next up here for this pick? 14 seconds. Kmet, Russell Wilson, Laporta, Tyquan Thornton, Mims, DJ Chark, Higbee.
I don't mind reaching on Laporta if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I feel like we get Laporta a lot. You get the week 16 matchup against Minnesota. I know you like Laporta in a vacuum. Is that week 16 correlation something you were considering there as well?
It is, because I have a lot, and because it's ahead of ADP, I am trying to find the right drafts to do it. And yet in some of those drafts, he's obviously been sniped. I think in the drafts that I've done with you, I've tended to see him go well above price. Perhaps that's because, I mean, you're on board with him there. Drafters know that that's going to be an option for you, so they may have to go a little bit early. But I definitely wanted to get him here with Hawkinson. I think that also potentially frees us up for just the 2 tight ends if we want to go that route. I really like 3 tight end. We've done a lot of 3 tight end. But if you get the right pick that also creates flexibility where now maybe you have an extra roster spot, you want to take advantage of that too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this because this construction is similar. Pat and I started with a 1-5-5-1 build the last draft. We also started with a double anchor RB build, and we also took Kendre Miller as our 5th running back. We basically just tabbed off of running back for the rest of the draft after getting Kendre as a 5th with a double anchor. I know you never think about structure super rigidly like that if you have a 6th running back that you really like. But when you consider the flexibility we now have at tight end and running back of being done if we want, we could theoretically make the case that we're only taking quarterbacks and wide receivers the rest of the way.
We definitely could. I think the flip side of that, and the nice thing about maybe having that spot back, is that we've taken 2 injured players and perhaps a 3rd string player. And so even though we have a ton of talent, we may still need some more individual week options for the first half of the season.
Who's the 3rd string player, Kendre?
Perhaps.
The scary thing is on the team we've drafted, I'm like, which potential 3rd string player is he referencing here? Yeah, one thing I actually wanted to frame the conversation with Laporta, because I did notice you had Kincaid still high in the ranks. I feel like in my echo chamber, a bunch of us have been like, Kincaid is too overpriced relative to Laporta and Michael Mayer, who's like free, and some of the other plethora of late round tight end options. Are you still high on Kincaid, willing to take him without Josh Allen, only with Josh Allen? Like, how are you playing his pricey cost here?
Yeah, he's someone I still have ranked somewhat aggressively. I'm definitely in. I think if you get that week 17 game, he's a more fun way to play it than a lot of the other Bills options, which I'm more or less out on. And yet I have very, very little. So I'm not actually picking him in drafts. I think you want to go Laporta. Mayer, as you mentioned, is very, very interesting. I had an interesting debate with Ben on a Stealing Bananas draft that's going to come out, both on the draft and then on the recap, about Mayer and how he fits in, and perhaps the really bad projection that you get with him when you work through the whole team. So I thought that was really interesting. Anybody who wants to think through that part of it, make sure you check that show out. I guess I'm still a little bit surprised that Mayer is so inexpensive, and I do think he's a nice out in the last round if you need some tight end firepower.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of our quarterbacks coming off the board here. We might have to get creative with some backdoor stacks. Jordan Love goes, Kenny Pickett goes. So no Dobbs stack, no Pickens stack, which definitely clears out the cupboard here for potential quarterback stuff. So we might have to get creative, Shawn, as we think through our in-game here as far as giving us tournament upside in the playoff weeks. Obviously have the Vikings stack, and we are optimizing to get them to week 17, but we will have to get creative here on the board. We're about to pick at the 14-15 turn. Looking at available stuff, a couple wide receivers, you and I will select in this range a decent amount here. We got some running back fallers, although we're maybe not necessarily done, like you said. Some backdoor options here with these quarterbacks. What are you kind of seeing here with this board?
Well, I would like to go with Samuel. I think that always opens some things up. And I think that in a vacuum, he is a good pick. You have Mostert there, a player that we like. I would probably take Spears here right around ADP. He's someone who I think because of the injury element is discounted. Now, obviously you have Derrick Henry also taking just a massive number of snaps. He doesn't really address the issue that I talked about where maybe you're getting more early season. So if we prefer Mostert from that perspective, I haven't been getting a lot of Spears though in my drafts. And I think that his potential electricity, I mean, the thing with Mostert is you actually need to have two guys probably go to get a massive 15, 16, 17. With Spears, if Henry is out, I mean, he's going to have just a monster season. The knee stuff is probably something that limits him from a second contract perspective. And it could always crop up earlier. But when the team is thinking about making that pick, when they're completely on board with it, and they're saying to themselves, he's going to make it through a big chunk of the first contract, and you don't really want to pay running backs for that second contract anyway. I mean, I think he's someone in a variety of formats where if you get the injury, then you're going to get such just so many points because the guy is really exciting. And you compare him to an A-Chain, which I really warmed up to and am hoping to get quite a bit of as we go down the stretch. I mean, A-Chain has the chance just to be the starter. I think that he's going to score a lot of points. I don't know that the players are that dissimilar, though. And I don't know that A-Chain is actually as good as Spears. So when we're talking about obviously different prices, when we're getting into this round 15 area where we're making contingent bets at running back, I really like that play. And so as we continue to kind of optimize for the postseason and like, how would we win it if we're going to win it? I think that Spears is the guy.
Yeah, that's a fun click there. I couldn't help us out from a portfolio tiebreaker standpoint because it was 15.9% Mostert, 15.9% Chuba, and 15.9% Tajay Spears. So I've been drafting these guys at a literally equal clip there. It does get us to the 6 running backs. We now have a 1-6-6-2 build. So our team here, just Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Definitely glad we took him there, just seeing how kind of some of these other picks went. Running back, Ramondre, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, Kendre Miller, Tajay Spears. And then our wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Chris Godwin, George Pickens, Quentin Johnston, Romeo Doubs, Curtis Samuel. Tight ends, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta. 3 more picks to land the plane on this one, Shawn.
And I think we're in great shape, especially when you consider that the 101, you get Justin Jefferson, you get the 2-3 turn, which in underdog maybe not as helpful as in some other formats, but then you do have to wait through all the picks. You can get wiped out. You mentioned what's happened a little bit at quarterback, and yet I think that we have the options remaining for us that will make it work.
Yep. And we are seeing, we're starting to see the push up. I remember I think it was on our show last week where you said you were kind of starting to see the late round running backs with a little bit more clarity and finding some more options that you felt comfortable with. Whereas I think earlier in the offseason is like, we don't know about their roles, the job security, their position on the depth chart. Ty Chandler, I believe, was one of those guys you were kind of referencing there. We see him go at 181 here in the 16th round. So we're starting to see kind of the slow push up of this, next generation, 2023 generation of 0 running back targets.
And it's so much fun to think about the athletic dynamism of some of the guys who are still available. And that's one of the things that's always fun about zero RB. It's not, and certainly so many of our teams are double anchor. We're very clearly not completely fading running backs in any way, shape, or form. But I love this portion of the draft where you can take athletes, you can take the next wave of stars, you can get guys before they jump into that 7-8 round range and become tricky plays. I've been reading that the Vikings may have the biggest offer out to Dalvin Cook, which is interesting when you start to think about those other Minnesota runners.
All right. What do you like here? We do have some tight ends that we've mentioned. Wan'Dale Robinson continues to be free. We both like him. We might want to get one of our quarterbacks here as well. What do you think is the first selection?
Yeah. I mean, do you want to take the the QB and then push the other element? Structurally, what is your preference on the second pick here, Pete?
Structurally, I feel like we are going to like the tight end options if we want to sit out on tight end and prioritize wide receiver with this one. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. Anything else I'm missing? I want the Shawn pick here though. You might.
Yeah, let's go with Wan'Dale.
Than me. Okay.
Let's go with Wan'Dale. We've taken him a lot. We probably took him ahead of where we needed
the cheapest. We've got Wan'Dale, I think. Yeah.
Right. And yet the things I'm reading, and again, you get some maybe unsupported enthusiasm right about now, where then a month later, the player's like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm not ready. The team's not going to let me play. But the same element that you mentioned for Javonte Williams, that's what the rhetoric is around Robinson. So, I mean, if he's actually ready for training camp, now does that mean they still couldn't hold him out for a few weeks or do some other things to manipulate the roster, not put too much pressure on him? They definitely could. And there are so many guys there with Hyatt and Campbell and Hodgins. Even if he's healthy, maybe the points aren't there. But based on his collegiate profile and what he did in the small spurts last season, and when you're looking for round 17 upside, I think that he dwarfs all of the rest of the guys. And so especially if we're looking for a final wide receiver, I'm feeling pretty comfortable making that selection. I just think he's going to be so good.
For the audio listeners, Shawn doesn't even have to say the name Sam Howell. It's just known that we draft him. I believe he just comes as a placeholder on our teams. Underdog doesn't even give us the option to not have him. These teams just come built with Sam Howell. Here's our team through 17 rounds, a 2-6-7-2 build. We got Kirk Cousins double stacked with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson with the Dobbs bring back. We got Sam Howell stacked up with Curtis Samuel, which was a little backdoor stack option for us there after we got shut out on Jordan Love and Kenny Pickett. Our running back room is packed, absolutely loaded. Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, Kendre Miller, and Tajay Spears. Our wide receivers, along with Jefferson, Chris Godwin, George Pickens, Quentin Johnston, Romeo Doubs in the top 100. Curtis Samuel, Wan'Dale Robinson, and then our tight ends, Hawkinson and Laporta. I'm actually curious where you're going to have us going here with this last pick, just because there are, I think, a few different avenues here. But how are you feeling about this team through 17?
I really like it because I think it's got the different positions covered in a very workable way. And I don't necessarily love a 2 QB build with Howell as one of them, because even if you love him, you have to be aware of and mentally calculate in the huge risk there. I also don't really love Kirk Cousins in a 2 QB build unless we have both guys. Once we have both Jefferson and Hawkinson, I think that you have made a big enough bet that you're looking for a big enough season that now you're more or less saying, I mean, that's going to work if these other picks are going to work. I do like to do an element sometimes with either Gesicki, Thornton, or even Hunter Henry, and then Mac Jones in the last 2 picks with just those 2 guys. If I have any of the wide receivers who play against New England in 15, 16, 17, but we don't have that on this team, I don't believe.
Forgot to pull up this comment from Tyler earlier. Like or your croissants will stale and your coffee will chill. Thank you, Tyler, for always reminding people to like the stream. Make sure you guys are subscribed as we march toward 15K subs, when I will do a giveaway. $1,500 I'm going to give away when we hit that $500 to 3 different individuals. And all you have to do to be entered is subscribe and comment on any of my draft streams. You can comment on all of them. I have made a playlist there if you want to get max amount of entries. We also need you guys to subscribe to RotoViz. If you are looking for the audio of this one, if you're only able to catch some of the video and you want to listen on the go, get subscribed to the RotoViz podcast feed. You'll get this show in there along with all of the other great RotoViz shows, including Stealing Bananas and those drafts that Shawn has been doing with Ben Gretsch, my co-host over on Ship Chasing, all kinds of good stuff over there. And yeah, I kind of wanted to circle back, Shawn, as we make this last pick of, I have a feeling like the best player just on the board is probably going to be a tight end. And yet, would we want to take a quarterback here, take a Desmond Ridder, stack up Baker Mayfield with Chris Godwin? What do you think is the play here?
I love it because I think we can go any direction. I think we could take, the best running back too and address that. I think that Desmond Ridder or Trey McBride are probably the way. I think that Ridder is an interesting quarterback without the players around him. So if you want QB, that would be my preference. I mean, we've got tight end covered, so we don't have to go with McBride in this one if we don't want.
Yeah, that was a tough one. I was feeling very light at quarterback, so I went ahead and grabbed Ridder for us here to complete this draft. We don't have any correlation with Ridder there, but I think ultimately the Cousins-Howell just feels a little light. I was reviewing the team Pat and I drafted at our very first draft, and it was a Kirk Cousins-Bryce Young team, and I was feeling a little naked there. So I did tack on Ridder. You think that's a play, or would you have maybe have just said, screw it, we're gonna rock with these two?
Well, the other way that I like to go, I think if you have the positions really well balanced, that you can even add another running back. And I think Travion would have been a very interesting pick for this team as well. Mostly I'm trying not to overdraft McBride. He's someone I really like. I love the talent. I don't think that they have a lot of competition for targets. I think they could be a lot better when Kyler plays at the end. So again, if you're looking at the last round pick, I mean, who are going to be the guys who win you tournaments from round 18? I think that all fits. And yet, I mean, the Cardinals have enough problems that you don't want to come out of your season where Trey McBride is sitting there as like easily your most rostered player.
Yeah, it is. At least you can have like some tiebreakers for that to kind of, hey, I have some optionality at the end of this draft. I can justify a couple different positions. I am surprised that you, just structurally speaking, I like the Travion play as well, but just thinking that going with a 2-7-7-2 build, normally that build for me is like a 0 RB build where I have like maybe an elite quarterback, elite tight end, 6 wide receivers early, and then just a ton of late running backs. But to have those 7 running backs with the Ramondre and Breece Hall, I normally don't do that. But you've also pushed me outside my comfort zone of doing, 3 tight end builds that also feature an elite or more expensive tight end. So that I know is something you're just in general more open to.
And one of the things that I'm pretty focused on at running back is to get enough Breece Hall, to get enough Javonte Williams, to get enough Kendre Miller. But I also want those teams to be alive, right? And if you have the huge upside, but you're maybe taking a lot of zeros in the first half of the season, then I'm not necessarily looking at it as these are the names and this is what we're going to have in the postseason, but how do I get that team through? So do I actually have running back covered enough? So if I'm trying to mix in having those guys, but also getting them into the playoffs, I'm willing to take more running backs if the rest of the draft has kind of worked perfectly to where I'm not desperate at the other spots.
I'm going to recap this final team here, and it's formed 3-6-7-2. Kirk Cousins, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder. Running backs, Ramondre, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, Kendre Miller, Tajay Spears. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Chris Godwin, George Pickens, Quentin Johnston, Romeo Doubs, Curtis Samuel, Wan'Dale Robinson. Tight end, TJ Hawkinson, and Sam Laporta. And Shawn, if we do want to tell ourselves a Week 17 story, Desmond Ridder rushes for 2 touchdowns against Khalil Herbert, who's running rampant in the open field, rushes for 200 yards and a touchdown himself. That could be the week 17 correlation you need, Ritter and Khalil Herbert.
And Michael Dubner was sharing some really cool information with me from his tool about his drafts, and was saying that the week 17 with Chicago Atlanta was one that he to this point had played on a ton of teams. And I was kind of joking with him about that, but there are some ways that game could be exciting. I mean, you think about maybe a fully formed Ritter, Justin Fields as a superstar. And you mentioned the rushing with Ritter. He didn't do as much in that late season stretch as I was hoping to see. And he wasn't one of these guys in college who rushed for huge numbers, but he rushed for consistent numbers. He rushed for touchdowns. He's extremely athletic. There are a lot of things they can do with the weapons they have in that offense, where if he does have designed runs, those plays will be very effective and I think amplify the rest of the offense. So I'm expecting Ritter to have not necessarily difference-making rushing points, but meaningful rushing points, to where in the right week, it could really help you. And he's a guy, again, in 18, where I think by himself is really interesting, because you could easily see that working out without it elevating London and Pitts, somebody they obviously had trouble elevating last season.
Shawn, you mentioned the thing about like pumping the brakes a little bit on Trey McBride. I just did the exercise last week reviewing my portfolio through 75 drafts. Highly recommend checking out that show if you didn't see it. Also used, we've mentioned Michael Dubner does great work over at RotoViz. He has a really cool Excel tool that I think complements really well with the Best Ball Hub at Fantasy Life of kind of reviewing your portfolio. So check out that video. I also wrote it up in a post on my newsletter, the PO Box, if you want to see the visuals from the Best Ball Hub and Dubner sheet. But that was a long-winded way of asking you, Shawn, have you done any portfolio review, or is it just kind of like, hey, I seem to take Trey McBride in every draft. Maybe I want to chill a little bit.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at some of these guys from time to time. And because I think that the late and 3 tight end is so dynamic, I do have a lot of those players, but I'm trying to mix them in different patterns or different combinations late in these drafts. Obviously, you're looking to play them in ways that make the week 16, make the week 17 really stand out. So I think that once you get a good percentage, or you've drafted enough teams with those guys, I like that, because that gives you a little bit of a basis in case the prices really jump, but then it also frees you up to really look for values with those players the rest of the way. So yeah, do a little portfolio analysis, see where you are, see where you're going. As you mentioned, your tool and the Dubner tool. I mean, Michael does fantastic work, and I know you've done a lot of content with him. Everybody should check that out. Connor O'Driscoll, who won the 2021 FFPC Best Ball Tournament and placed 2 more teams into last year's final, has a new article out on RotoViz that starts working through the process of how do you win that tournament. Obviously, I don't think anybody has more expertise on it than he does. That's going to be a series. People want to check that out. So much great content out in the fantasy industry right now. I mean, Pete, this is a great time to be alive. Such a fun time to draft.
It really is. There is so much stuff. And also too, with like Underdog, with this new weekly winners format, which requires a completely different frame of thinking for how to attack it. So many smart people, so much stuff out there. We really are in the golden age of fantasy football, and specifically best ball content, as we all try to figure out these games. And it really has been a blast. Shawn, appreciate as always you joining us here. This is the Best Ball Banana Stand. Shawn and I draft a team every Wednesday around 11 a.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel. If you guys are audio listeners, you can check out the rest of my streams at youtube.com/Peter Overzet. If you're watching the video version of this and you would like to get the audio and check out all of the other great RotoViz audio podcast offerings, subscribe to the RotoViz podcast feed. I got those links down below, including links to the RotoViz site. Like I said, really the most bang for your buck site. And I just think underrated. The amount of great stuff flowing from the RotoViz funnel is, it's almost too much to take in a good way. There's so much good stuff there. So Shawn, any other parting shots here before we put another one of these in the books?
Just that it was such a good time. I like this team. I'm glad we got a 101. We have that Vikings play. Check out the Stealing Banana shows that I mentioned. Colin Kelly and I have some great stuff over at RotoViz Overtime. We've been having fun with those. And yeah, join us over there at RotoViz. As you said, you're always so kind. Blair Andrews, our managing editor, more great stuff from him. He does fantastic work. We have the roster construction explorers for Underdog and also for some other contests. Those are subscriber favorites. We'd love to see you guys.
And as far as the rest of my schedule today, if you guys have not gotten your Best Ball Mania fix, you are in luck because I'm going to be drafting 2 more teams today on stream. One on the Swolecast at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Always a riot over there with the crew. And then tonight on Ship Chasing, we're having Chris Allen from Fantasy Life join us. He's going to talk about some of the weather-related research he's been doing, which I think can help inform some of how we think about the playoff sprint on Underdog. And then, of course, naturally, we will hop in a draft with Chris Allen. So full day of drafting on tap. Appreciate all you guys hanging out, spending your time with us on these Best Ball Breakfasts. For Shawn, I'm Pete. And for Pat, this has been Best Ball Breakfast. We'll see you guys next Wednesday.